On the program, sir.
Thank you for having me, Femi. Good evening.
Good evening. Welcome. Yeah. Well, let's start with former Vice President and former presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar's comment on the budget. He says the 2025 budget, the capacity of the 2025 budget to foster sustainable economic growth and tackle Nigeria's deep-rooted challenges is questionable. He feels like this fiscal plan presented by President Bola Tinubu is just business as usual, and nothing good can come out of it.
Atiku lost an election, and he wants to remain relevant for the next electoral cycle. So you should expect that he will throw even the kitchen sink at the person he perceived took away his opportunity. So if you ask him now, he said that the budget is blah, blah, blah. Just ask him to give you an alternative opinion, what he would have done. You'll find out that he has nothing to say. He's just always going to throw all this mud regularly so that he will look like he knows what he's saying, which I would do if I'm in his shoes too, even if it doesn't make sense. But you just have to keep talking because people must know that you're an opposition leader and you have to prove that you will have done better. So Atiku is doing what Atiku will always do. He's been contesting the election since I was out of secondary school in the university. I think 1993 was the first time he contested for the option 8-4 in Jos in 92. So yes, I was already in the university then. So Atiku has been contesting the election. I was in the university. My children are now in the university. He's still contesting the election. And the man needs to rest. So what I will have advised Alhaji Atiku is that he should go and rest. Let serious-minded people, younger people who are smarter, take over the mantle of opposition leadership so that they can give honest and more robust, more intellectually sagacious advice or criticism. What he's doing right now is just talking for the sake of talking. He needs to rest. He's a grandfather. He's 77 or thereabout. He should just take it easy.
Okay, let's move into the budget now, away from the politics of Atiku. President Bola Tinubu, this will be the second budget in the life of his administration, and he says that already the reforms introduced by his administration are beginning to yield results. But people are asking, what are the indicators? What's there to point to that Nigerians can touch and feel and say, indeed, these reforms are actually beginning to yield results?
Okay, I'll take them one after the other. Let's go firstly to the Forex reform. You and I will agree that before now, I can sit in my house and somebody just, because I know somebody in CBN, I could get $10 million allocation without having to lift a finger for 420 naira to $1. And I take it to the black market and instantly I'm a millionaire without doing anything. Now you have taken off that. Right now the CBN is doing everything it can to, we know there's a new window now on the electronic, the what's it called? This thing just ran off my head. But the electronic window where all buyers, all sellers meet, and there's a more transparent system of exchange so that you don't arbitrarily determine exchange rate. And if you follow in the last 3 weeks now, thereabout, because it came on stream on the 2nd of December, if you follow, it's been positive all along. So the racketeering that was going on within the CBN and some other people have been eliminated. If you also bring that to other aspects of our monetary policies, right now you can sit down and say, okay, the Naira is actually finding its true value. We are no longer borrowing to subsidize currency, which was actually just an elitist thing. So you can sit down as an elite, decide that I want to go and get treatment. You go, even if I have just a headache, I want to travel, then you get dollars at a cheaper rate than you get. All this nonsense that we are doing. See, nobody should continue to do what we were doing in the past because we have sunk in. There was a day I sat somewhere, I think I was reading, we've wasted about $13 trillion in trying to, in how many years, in trying to keep Naira low, which does not work for anybody. On the long run, you will continue to lose. So in the monetary aspect, you can see the reforms are beginning to yield fruit. Naira is finding its true value. There is now a market for willing buyers and willing sellers and all those things. So, and you have been able to eliminate the middlemen who can just sit down in their house, do nothing, and become millionaire by selling. So we have removed so many nonsense in that area. So what it needs to now do is to consolidate going into the new year. Now, if you look at the other aspect, which is the one that is the big elephant in the room, the fuel subsidy. I think there's a newspaper article I could have shown you here that says we are borrowing to actually pay subsidy. It was crazy. There was no sense in what we were doing. We were just wasting money. So some people became automatically very wealthy. So right now, you can see what is going on between Dangote refinery and the NNPC refinery that has come up and some other marketers. Right now, there is a price war. Just this week that ended today or yesterday, the Dangote refinery is doing a promo of buy 2 million liters or how many liters you get extra for this. Then they are dropping the price to 899. But so you see, it was painful initially, but over time will gravitate to where it's stabilized. So right now, the trillions and trillions we could have borrowed to pay subsidy and make some people rich, we will no longer have to borrow that. And then, just yesterday or Friday, IMF also, sorry, I need to get the news correctly because it's something I had in mind that I'm going to talk about.
Okay.
They said Nigeria was able to service some of their loans, so President Tinubu has paid off some of the loans he made. So we are servicing our debt. We have enough liquidity to deal with some of the shocks that we'll have. And as I speak with you, I'm sure you are aware that our foreign reserves has peaked at about 40 billion US dollars. So the reforms are working. Now, what you now need, I don't know what the title of this budget is, but it should be more of a budget of consolidation now. The reforms have been harsh. They have touched everybody. Now that we are where we are now, it can only get better from this point.
Because, you know, some people say, again, all of the talks about the reforms working is elitist, because the people will still say, whoa, there is hunger in the land, the inflation is still high. If you go to the market, purchasing power is still very low. We see how a lot of people scamper for freebies, for all of these palliatives. We have seen the stampedes and all of that. And they're saying these are because of these are the impacts of these reforms being implemented, which has taken money out of the pockets of Nigerians and inflicted more hardship.
I agree that things have been hard because, you see, some people said something which made me laugh. It will have sounded very intelligent if it is not that there is a context to it. They said that, why are you doing all these things at the same time? I said, this man have only 4 years. The second 4 years is not yet guaranteed. So, unlike a Lee Kuan Yew that could have 20-something years, he knew when he came on board, he has only 4 years. So he has to do these things. So that is where it looks a bit harsh, because you have to put in everything at the same time. However, like I said, we are beginning to see the result. And that result is manifested in some of the things I just said earlier on, in terms of fuel prices, in terms of Forex and all the whatnot. Now, what I expect from next year is a situation where we will focus on agriculture. Because as you were talking about inflation, which I agree with you that it's high, but if you go and check what is the biggest figure that is causing this inflation, it's food inflation.
Indeed.
And the food inflation is occasioned by the fact that we've had a lot of disturbances in local production. And before the former government left, there was what you call the anchor borrower program. However, it was mismanaged. Today, the CBN governor is somewhere answering for some of the things he's done. The man who was running NASAL, he had a case, but of course a lot of things going. So a lot of nonsense went down there. But I was advocating, and I will still advocate, that we need to dust that document. There are good things in it that can be picked out. We have to massively, from next year, ensure that food inflation is sorted. And I think the president is listening. Probably this is why, if you notice, the last thing he did before he left Abuja after a presentation was to work with the Ministry of Water Resources and appoint people to run the river basins. And you know the river basins generally will have massive input into irrigation and agriculture. So I think those are the plans. And I hope the Ministry of Agric can also work with the presidency to ensure that we are able to produce not just food during the rainy season, but we can do both the raining and the dry season farming. Those are implementable. Those are excuse me, those are what I call the low-hanging fruit. The problem we had was mismanagement, and I've always said it. The CBN have no business in directly intervening in agriculture. That direct intervention was what destroyed the anchor borrower. I am looking at a situation where you empower another agency, probably the Bank of Agriculture, probably merge NARSA with the Bank of Agriculture, because they are basically supposed to be doing the same thing. When you merge NARSA with Bank of Agriculture, then you can say, okay, this is the amount we are putting for this, because look, we need to look at the crops where we are strong, where we have the advantage, the comparative advantage. When we see that, we cannot say the Bank of Agriculture will give loans to farmers for this kind of crops. Maybe let's say wheat or rice, for instance. And when you are doing that, you can easily geolocate. Say, okay, within these areas, we're going to plant rice. Within this area, we're going to plant maize. Within this area, we're going to plant wheat. And you're going to have off-takers. There's a way we can work around the entire value chain and ensure that we feed Nigerians. Honestly, people use, some people will talk about insecurity, but honestly, yes, there is insecurity, but it is not the biggest problem. The biggest problem we've had in agriculture has been corruption and lack of vision. For instance, I think the current Ministry of Agriculture needs to do better than they are doing. So if we're able to match the vision with the willpower, I'm saying it without equivocation, we can feed Nigerians. And when Nigerians are well fed, the inflation, like I told you, the biggest figure in this current inflation, about 40%, is food inflation. If we're able to bring it down tremendously, and the president has promised that by next year, he hopes to cut it down to about 50%. So it tells you that they are working. I have not seen the entire budget, and like Atiku was saying earlier on, and I think it is nonsense. We need to query the budget, yes. However, it is just the figure. We now need to follow with the National Assembly to see how each line items are allocated. Then you cannot say this budget is a failure or is a success. But for someone to just sit there in his room, read something, I mean, we don't do that.
Well, you talked about insecurity, and we're beginning to see increased government spending on defense and security.
I think defense carry the highest.
Yes, but this has not really translated into the safety of lives and property.
I disagree. If you follow the news recently, we have had massive wins from the military against bandits and banditry. A lot of the leaders have been captured. In fact, if you follow the news, you are the news people. A lot of the leaders are either surrendering or running away. So clearly, there has been massive wins. What has happened is that the press, generally, I'm not saying you now, I'm not talking about TVC, but the press generally find a way to pretend when the wins are being announced. Then one small defeat against us, it becomes a big news. So clearly, there has been massive, and I'm saying it, massive wins by our security agencies, by the army, the navy. I mean, I say navy, the air force. There's been a lot of the police are doing their jobs too. So in terms of insecurity, the spate of banditry has massively reduced in the last year, and I hope it will continue in that trajectory.
Because we saw a report that made the government a bit uncomfortable about the amount Nigerians have spent on paying ransom in the past 1 year, and that's what people are using as a basis to judge.
Well, I would not want to talk about that report because I understand the DSS is doing some investigation on it, and the people who released the report actually claimed that their website was hacked. Because, I mean, the amount that was mentioned, where would that kind of money flow within the country? I also think Nigerians have a problem with figures. There's a way we throw figures around. That is how somebody woke up and said somebody had how many billions of dollars in his house. My younger brother, a legislator, and of course it was a stupid story then that person has now been... I'm sorry, but it was not a wise story, and it has been rebutted. And in fact, the person has been the person has been charged or something.
Yeah,
so clearly, Nigerians have a problem with figures. So I think that figure looks exaggerated. While I'm not an expert in security, I think as a man of figure and a person of finance, I think those figures are grossly exaggerated. However, I will not want to make too much comment until the DSS is done with their investigation on that. I don't think I agree with that figure.
Already we are hearing talks about 2027 presidential election. Some people throwing their hats in the ring. Is it still too early in the day?
I think it is too early in the day. I mean, Nigerians are yet to finish from what happened in 2023, and you're already talking about 2027. We have not even known how many of us will not wake up before 2025. So I think people need to calm down. So yes, election is good, but people need to be governed first and foremost. And before we finish this, I saw a report today, a December 26, 1983 figures. I mean, newspaper, Nigerians are hungry was the title on that newspaper, very big, bold headlines. So I think these Nigerians are hungry has been a recurring decimal that we talk about. The truth is, everybody will not be rich. Everybody will not be able to have what they want. But what happens is, how do we care for the poor? It is where we have to distinguish between humans and animals. Our ability to care for those that are weaker in the society, taking care of the poor, is what will distinguish us as a good or a bad bunch of people.
And some people have said that is the problem, you know, with all of these reforms and its impact on the vulnerable. A lot of people agree that these reforms are necessary, but it is how the government was able to manage it in providing for the vulnerable who are the worst affected by the reforms.
And then there's a lot of wickedness too in our system. You see, sometimes I think we take advantage of situation, and I'll give you an example. A piece of face mask is about 15 naira, even with the inflation now. When we had COVID, people went as high as selling one for 500 naira. You see, Nigerians will tell you it's business, but sometimes we're just being wicked to ourselves. Yes, there are harsh reality, but do you know that the federal government has taken off tariffs on medicine, but has it reflected in the market? People just deliberately keep price high. So that is why I think FCC, PC need help. Probably they will need another stronger body to manage price and control price. Nigerians have the tendency, if uncontrolled, to actually cheat ourselves. It's our way of life. I'll give you another example. Just 2 weeks ago, it's not a culture here, but somehow we have adapted it. They call it Black Friday. Some of the shops that did Black Friday here, in Oyalowo land that we copied it from, when they say Black Friday, people go and pick the items they like. In Nigeria, somebody will go with 1 million cart. He packs everything, buy it, and then go and resell at a higher price. And then he tells you his business. We are just a wicked people. Do you remember the story of how many trailers of rice were found in warehouses where the president released to governors and some other people? They refused to share it. So sometimes, while I agree that the reforms are a bit harsh, the resultant harshness is not just from the reform. It's from some of the attributes of Nigerians. We just love to harm ourselves and pretend that it's business. Just yesterday or 2 days ago, I saw on the newspaper or in the news where NAFDAC went to a whole market and destroyed, if you see, about 5 billion naira worth of consumables, drinks. And some people will tell you it's business they are doing. So you see, sometimes it is true that things are harsh, but we need to tell ourselves the truth. Taking advantage of ourselves is actually evil. So yes, there are reforms. Yes, there is inflation. Yes, there is. Okay, now there was a time the price of dollar to naira went as high as 1,900. It has steadily climbed down. But has it reflected in the prices of the things? No. Those that raise up price have refused to bring it down. So Nigerians too, we need to talk to ourselves. Yes, there are things are hard. But like I said, what will differentiate between we and animals is our ability to take care of the most vulnerable in the society. And that behoves on all of us, not just the government.
All right, then. Thank you so much for your time on the program. Well, we need to go now, and we must apologize to our viewers for starting the program a few minutes behind schedule. Well, that's it on the program today. You can see this